So good morning, everyone. Myself, Dr. Rajni, working as an associate professor here in Chandigarh Group of Colleges. I hope I'm audible. Actually, it's showing some technical glitch regarding audio. Am I audible? Can you please confirm?
Yes, I'm taking this
Okay.
perfect.
Okay, so I'm Dr. Rajni. My specialization is accounting and statistics. I'm having around 13 years of experience in the same teaching as well as research. So today our topic is research methodology, right? So this topic is a vast topic. I tried my best to cover each and every element, the basics, fundamentals. So today I'm going to start with the sampling techniques, and if we found the time, later on we will do some scalings also, right? So let me share my screen with you all. Okay, so is my screen is visible to everyone?
Yes, miss.
Okay, so let's start with sampling designing, right? So the very first question is, what is sample? Why we choose the sample? These are the basic questions which we have in our mind when we have to start the research, right? Whenever we want to conduct the research, it's quite tough for us to cover each and every element of the population. Here I'm talking about the primary research, right? In primary research, we basically go with questionnaire designing and all. We have to frame a questionnaire, and on the same, we have to got the responses from the respondents, right? So if we have to fill the questionnaire, it's quite tough to us to cover each and every element of the population. In that case, what we will do, we instead of our whole population, we will go with the sample. Sample is the sub part of the population, right? So now the question is, how can we frame the sample? How can we go with the particular sample? Here we have to define the sample. We have to pick a sample. We have to pick that sample which can represent the entire population of our study. Means ki after analysis, you can generalize your results. You can say that your study is generalized. Like, just take an example. If I have to conduct the study in India, right? So it's quite tough for me to cover each and every element, right? I can't visit each and every respondent, every person who is living here in India. So what can I do is I'll simply pick a sample out of my entire population, and on the basis of particular sample, I can generalize my study, right? So here the sample is basically a process of getting the information from a subset of the larger population. Subset is your sample, larger population is the whole population to whom you are representing, right? And then whatever results we are getting, right, the same we have to use to make the estimation for the entire population. So this is the cheaper and faster way to ask the question from our respondents, right? Now the difference is population and sample. So this is our entire population. So out of this population, we have to pick a sample which can represent our entire population. There should not be any biasness, any judgment, and anything else. We have to pick up sample which can represent your entire population. On the basis of that, you can generalize your results. Okay. Next is, now please anyone can tell me, is this a good sample or bad sample? Yes, any of you? This is my entire population and this is a sample. So out of this population, I'm picking this sample. So is this sample represent my entire population? No one is speaking. Okay, I think you don't have the access for the same, might be. Okay, so this is my entire population and I'm picking the sample this way. So this is a bad sample. Why this is a bad sample? Because this sample is not representing my entire population, right? So next is, I have another sample out of my population. So this is my population. Again, out of this population, I'm taking this sample. This is a very bad sample. Why? Because this doesn't represent, this is not from my population, right? So this is a right sample which represent your entire population. We have to represent our population on the basis of our subset, on the basis of our sample. Okay, so next start with the sampling designing process, right? So the very first thing is we have to define our population. It's depend whether our population is finite in number or infinite in number, right? First, we have to define the population to whom we want to target. The second is we have to determine the sampling frame from what kind of like sample we want, what we want to study. After that, we have to determine the sampling procedure. If I'm saying sampling procedure, then you have two types of sampling procedure. You have two types of sampling techniques. One is probability sampling technique and the second is non-probability sampling technique, right? So when your population is finite in number, in that case, you can go with probability sampling technique. And on the other hand, when your population is infinite in number, right? In that case, you can't go with probability sampling technique. We will go with non-probability sampling technique. So if your population is finite in number, we will go with probability sampling technique. Further, you have different categories under probability sampling technique. One is simple random sampling, systematic random sampling, stratified sampling, and cluster sampling. And if your population is infinite in number, in that case, we will go with non-probability sampling technique, which is further categorized under four categories: convenience sampling, judgmental sampling, quota sampling, and snowball sampling. After determining your sampling technique, now the next question is you have to determine the sample size. How much sample you are going to take for your study. Like you have this number of population with you, right? So out of that population, how much sample you can take, right? So you have to take that sample which after that sample which can represent your entire population, right? Then after, when you have decided your sampling technique and you have decided your sample size, the next step is you have to execute your sampling design. Okay, so let's start with sampling methods. These are the two sampling methods. One is probability sampling and the second is non-probability sampling technique. So the question is, what is the difference between the both probability as well as non-probability sampling technique? So when one thing I have already made you clear, like when you have finite number, when your population is in finite number, you can go with probability, and when it is in infinite, you have to go with non-probability sampling technique. The second is when you are giving equal chance, when you are giving equal chance to each and every element of your population to come under your study, that means you are using probability sampling, right? So now the question is, what is probability sampling? Probability sampling is a method in which we are providing equal chance to each and every element to come under our study. That is considered as probability sampling, right? Non-probability sampling is the vice versa of probability sampling technique. Non-probability sampling is when we are not providing equal chance to each and every element to come under our study. That is known as non-probability sampling technique, right? Is it clear? Probability and non-probability. Let's take an example. If I want to collect the data, right, from, just take an example, I'm teaching so and so particular class, right, and I have to collect the data for the students, right? If I'm going with mine on class only, right? So I'm not giving to equal chance to each and every student here. It is according to my convenience, and you can say conveniently I wanted to pick those students only who are more easier to contact, right? So that comes under non-probability, and probability is when I'm providing equal chance to each and every student to come under my study, right? So this is the basic difference between probability and non-probability sampling technique. Next is, further you can categorize probability and non-probability sampling into 4 parts. If I am saying probability sampling, here you have simple random sampling, systematic random sampling, stratified sampling, and cluster sampling. And non-probability sampling, you have convenience sampling, judgmental sampling, snowball sampling, and quota sampling, right? So let's start with the very first sampling method, that is simple random sampling. Random sampling and simple random sampling is the same thing. In simple word, you can say random sampling is when every member of the population is having equal chance to of being selected, right? And this kind of sampling, in this type of sampling, we we can use the tool like we yes. Yes. Any question? Okay, thank you. Is it visible? Okay, so to conduct this kind of sampling technique, one can use a tool, random number generator, and you have other techniques also, which is entirely based upon the chances, right? A simple example, I can give it to you in simple random sampling. Here, generally what happened when we have to admit our child in the school, right? So they use this simple random sampling technique. Everybody applied for their admission. So seats are limited, right? If they have around 30 seats at the very first stage, initial stage, preschool. So the total seats are 30. Might be 100 students applied for the same school. So they have to use this technique, simple random sampling. And here what they use lottery system. Yes, they simply define the numbers students with that, and they can make some chits for that. On every chit, they have written the name of so and so particular student. So in totality, just imagine they have 100 chits, which includes all 100 students. And then after they have to make a draw, right? They simply pick 30 chits out of those 100 chits. Whoever comes under those 30 chits, they may get admit in that school, right? So it is basically a lottery system. By chance, but whosoever have the chance, they may get selected, right? So here no biasness persists, no judgment persists of the researcher, right? So this is if your sample is small. In that case, we can use this lottery system also. But if you have a larger population with you, on that you can't apply lottery system. For that, we have different tools. Like one is random generator number. With the help of that, you can define your sample. This is a simple random sample. Here, this is your entire population, right? This is the bigger one. This is the larger group. Larger group is your entire population. Now randomly you can pick any people, any respondent from this whole universe. So randomly I am picking this. These are my sample now. I can't go with entire population. What I'll do, I'll pick my sample, right? So this is my sample, right? Okay, so one example I have mentioned here also. Suppose you want to select a simple random sample of 100 employees of a company, right? In totality, in a company there are 1000 employees. Out of those 1000 employees, you have to pick 100 employee for your study. Now, how will you select those 100 out of 1000? By using simple random sampling technique. What we will do, we will simply assign the numbers to each and every employee of the company, like 1 to 1000. You can go with that also, right? You can pick through random generator number also. Now I have assigned the number from 1 to 1000. Out of those 1000, I have to pick 100 employees. Now how can I pick? I use random number generator to select 100 employee. So when I am using random generator number, right, it means here I am giving equal chance to every respondent to be part of my study. I'm not picking anyone according to my convenience and all. There is not any biasness. If we are going with random sampling, it means biasness does not persist there. Next is systematic random sampling. Systematic random sampling is somehow similar to simple random sampling only, but there is a slighter easier to conduct and slighter change exists there. Here, every member of the population we have to list with a particular number. Same what we are doing in simple random sampling. But in simple random sampling, we use random number generator to pick the respondent. But here in systematic, we, we are not going to use random number generator. Here we have to find out the respondent by chosen at regular interval. We pick the every nth number. If we are going with systematic random sampling, every nth number will be our responsible. Now, who is the nth number? We have to find here. So, we have to pick the respondent on a regular interval. This is called systematic random sampling. So just take this example. I'm explaining it with this. Suppose I have to take the suppose my whole population is 100. Capital N represent my entire population. The whole population universe is 100 to me. And I want the sample of 20 respondents only. Out of this 100, I have to take the sample of 20 respondents. Fine. So we have to find out the regular interval here. This is my whole population. This is my sample size. How will we find out the regular interval? When we divide our whole population with our desired sample, we will get that regular interval, that nth number. That nth number is 5, right? So this is my entire population 1 to 100. Nth number is 5. Now from first 5 number, I'll pick I'll pick one element, one respondent randomly. First, we have to start with random number only, right? So from 1 to 5, I have to pick any respondent randomly. Let's say just imagine when I am going with random, I'm picking this number 4. So this fourth element, it will be the part of my research. After picking the first number randomly, now my next respondent will be on regular interval, right? So nth number is fifth, right? So after 4, every fifth number will be my respondent, right? So 4 plus 5 is 9. 9 plus 5 is 14. 14 plus 5 is 19. 19 plus 5 is 24. So after picking the very first number randomly, the next number I have to pick with the regular interval. Here the regular interval we got is 5. So every fifth number will be our respondent. Is it clear? I hope it's clear to everyone. First, we have to start with random number and then we have to go with regular interval. Next, this is a simple example. Suppose the all employee of a company, they are listed. The very first thing is you have to list it the employees of a company with alphabetical orders. It's up to you. Numericals also you can go with that. And from the first in number, it's not like you have to pick for first 5 only. Here, if in a company you have 1000 employees, so first we have to pick a number random. First, we have to pick the element, right? A respondent randomly, right? So from the first 10, if I'm go with random sampling, suppose I'm taking 6 as a number. So after 6, right, every 10th person will be my respondent. That every 10th person will be a part of my sample of the study. So this way you will continue. When you have to continue, 6, 16, 26, 36, and so on. You will cover with that. Next is the stratified sampling techniques. Now we have done with simple random sampling. We have done with systematic random sampling also. Next is stratified sampling technique. Now why we are using this stratified sampling? Here you can see to overcome the limitation of simple random sampling, right? Simple random sampling, systematic. We are using this stratified sampling, right? So if I'm saying to overcome the limitation, what will be the limitation of simple random sampling? As I'm saying, randomly we can pick any element for our study. So randomly if I'm picking, might be I'm getting males only, might be there are chances that I'm getting females only, right? So it is somehow, then if I'm getting only male, it means my study is skewed somewhere, right? It's not like normally distributed. Then what we can do is we can go with stratified sampling technique. Stratified and cluster sampling technique is a two-stage process, right? So here the very first thing is we have to prepare the stratas, right? For stratified sampling technique, first we have to go with the stratas, and from those stratas, we have to pick the sample randomly. This is a two-stage process, right? So this method is basically used when our population is having mixed characteristics. Where you can use the stratified sampling when your population is having a mixed characteristics. In that case, we can apply stratified sampling, right? Mixed characteristics means it divides your population into homogeneous group, right? If you have mixed characteristics population, then you can divide your entire population into homogeneous group based upon their relevant characteristics. If I'm saying relevant characteristics, it may be gender on the basis of their age, their income, their job profile. On the basis of that, you can categorize your entire population, right? And here what we have to check is we want to ensure that every characteristics of your population proportionally represent the sample, right? I'm not here going with the particular characters only. We have to cover each and every element, right? So once you have done with the strata, once you have prepared your strata, the next step is you have to select the sample from your strata. Then how will you select your sample out of the strata? You can simply use the random sampling technique and systematic sampling technique to pick your sample out of the stratas, right? So this is very much clear from this picture also. This is my entire population. From this population, I have made these two stratas, right? Which has mixed characteristics. On the basis of these two stratas, right? I am picking my sample. So stratified sampling technique is used when your population is having mixed characteristics, when you have homogeneous groups. Only that case you can apply stratified sampling, right? So this is a stratified sampling population. These are the different stratas and this is the sample, right? So any number, if I'm going with this, this is first strata, this is second and third. You can pick any number, right? I'm picking 2 from 1, 1 from 2 and 3 from this. So one more example is here. If a company is having 800 female employees and 200 male employees, right? And they want to ensure that their sample reflect the gender balance of the company, right? So what they can do is they can simply divide their population into two stratas on the basis of gender. One is for male and the second is for female. Now they have two stratas. Out of this population, out of these two stratas, now they have to pick the sample, right? So in totality, 800 plus 200, they have 1000 employees. In a company in totality, there are 1000 employees, out of which 800s are female and 200s are male, right? They want a sample which reflect the same, right? Which reflect the gender balance, right? If I'm saying I have to pick the sample of 100 employees, so if we are using random sampling or systematic, might be we are getting 100 female only, might be there is a possibility that we are getting 100 males only. Just to avoid this limitation, we are using stratified. Here we have to use a sample which represent the entire population. So we have to go with, if I have to pick 100 samples, so I have to pick 80 females and 20 males. So out of the female strata, I'll randomly pick 80 respondents, and from male data, male stratas, I'll pick 20 respondents. In totality, it is 100. This is another one. Now next is cluster sampling. And probability sampling, the next is cluster sampling. Cluster sampling is also a two-stage process. Here also we have to divide our population into subgroup, right? And that subgroup is known as cluster, right? Now, how can we form the cluster? In the subgroup which we are created in cluster that are heterogeneous. In stratified, the stratas are homogeneous, which has mixed characteristics. But in cluster sampling are heterogeneous. We have to prepare the cluster which itself is heterogeneous in nature, right? But each subgroup should have similar characteristics. Whatever subgroups, whatever clusters you are preparing, they should have similar characteristics. Clusters, characteristics should be similar, but we have to prepare the cluster heterogeneous, right, for the whole sample. Then once we prepare the cluster, the next step is we have to randomly select the subgroups, and from those subgroups we have to randomly select the respondents. Suppose if I'm preparing suppose 10 clusters I'm preparing. Now randomly you can pick any 5 cluster, and after picking those cluster, Next step is you have to pick the respondent randomly out of those 5 clusters only. First, you have to randomly pick the cluster, and later on, you have to randomly select the respondents out of those clusters only, whosoever you collected randomly. So this is the another example. Here we have 5 clusters, and randomly I am picking these 2 clusters, right? So here clusters are heterogeneous, right? And they have similar characteristics. I have quoted the examples. Yes, just go through with this example. If a company has 10 offices, right? They have 10 offices in different 10 cities across the country, right? Roughly, you can say they have the same number of employee in each and every office, and they have the similar roles and responsibility also. The working culture is the same in 10 cities, 10 offices, right? Now, you don't have the capacity to travel each and every office to collect your data. You wanted to conduct a study, so and so company. Now you have to, if you wanted to if you wanted to conduct a study on a particular company, let's say ABC, right? And that companies have different branches in 10 cities. So it's quite tough for so many of the time. It's quite tough to visit each and every um, office. So in that case, what we will do? We can use cluster sampling, right? So what we will do, we can simply select the clusters, right? First, we have to form the different cluster. Here we have 10 clusters. Then we have to collect the data by using the random sampling. So out of those 10, you can pick any clusters, any like 4 or 5 cluster. It's depend upon your sample size. And on the basis of that, whatever cluster you are picking, you have to pick the respondents also from those very clusters only, right? So random sampling is used to select the offices. I hope this probability sampling is clear to everyone. Any doubt, then please you can ask so that we can proceed further for non-probability sampling technique. Can we proceed further? If you have any doubt, then please you can write in chat box. Okay, let's start with non-probability sampling technique. Non-probability sampling technique is when your population is infinite in number, and when you are not providing equal chance to each and every element of the population to come under your study. That is called non-probability sampling technique. So the very first technique is judgmental sampling. This is also known as purposive sampling technique, right? So here, judgmental sampling is a sampling technique which involves the researchers to use their own judgment, right? To select a sample, and this is mostly useful for the purpose of the research, right? These days we use judgmental. Now, judgmental, just take an example. If I wanted to conduct a study on students, right? So I have to collect the data from the student. Right now, I'm professor in a university. So what can I do is I'll if I'm targeting so and so particular student, right? If I'm teaching in a class, right? I know each and every student. If I in my class I'm having strength of 60, right? I know these students are good in academics. It's my judgment only. They are good and they might have intellectual knowledge also regarding my topic. So I pick some students out of my every class, right? From section A, I am picking 20 students. From B, I am picking 10 students. It's up to my judgment. I don't know whether they have the knowledge regarding the same or whether they have the information about the awareness about my topic. This is my judgment. They can fill my questionnaire and they can return it back to me on time. So I'm giving them it, right? So this is my judgment. So if I'm giving it according to my judgment only, then it is a purposive sampling. Just take an example here. Okay, so this is a purposive, this is the entire population, right? So From this population, this is my sample size. I'm picking it according to my judgment. I'm here. If I'm saying I'm picking it according to my judgment, it means I'm not giving equal chance to each and every element to come under my study. Right? I'm picking according to my choices only. Right? So just take an example. If you want to know more about the opinion and experiences of disabled students at your university, right? So we select a number of students with different support needs in order to get varied range of data on their experiences with student services, right? So I'm picking it according to my judgment. I'm picking that respondents only, right? Next is convenience sampling. It is very much clear by its name itself. Convenience sampling is when we are picking the sample according to our convenient, right? This person is far to me, so I'm not going there. This person is near to me, so I'll prefer to take the sample from that person, right? So a convenient sample, it simply includes the individual who happen to be most accessible to the research, who is more convenient to me, who is near to me. I'll prefer to go that person. I'll target those researchers who is more accessible to me, right? So this is the easy or inexpensive way to gather the data, but there is no way to tell whether your sample is representing your entire population or not, right? So whatever result you are getting after convenience sampling, non-probability sampling, you can journalize the same, right? The results which you are getting after random sampling, you can generalize the same results, right? You can say, yes, this result is generalized to your population and represent to your entire population. But when I'm using non-probability sampling technique, convenience sampling technique, you can't say your sample is justifiable, it will represent your entire population. So you can't generalize your result. So this is the convenience sampling. This is the whole population. I'm picking the respondent according to my convenience, right? Who is near to me, to whom I can contact easily. Okay, this is another example. So you are researching opinion about the student support service in the university, whatever support students are getting from the university. So after each of your class, the one thing is you can simply ask from your student to complete a survey of the topic, right? So after your each and every class, you can simply ask from the student, you are getting response from the student. So this is a convenient way to gather the information. But here, what you are doing is you are surveying those students only. You are not considering each and every student of the university. Like I am considering the student from the management stream only. Here in university, we have engineering students also. Students are doing humanities, medical, whatever. So I'm not asking from them. I'm limited with some students only. Okay? Who are at the same level. So here, I can't say my sample is representing to the entire population, right? So later on, we can't journalize our study by picking a particular sample, right? Same level of students. Next is snowball sampling. Snowball sampling is basically this type of sampling is used when our population is hard to access, right? Whenever our population is hard to access, in that case, we use snowball sampling. Here, what we are doing, we recruit the participants. Why participants? Right? If I'm saying we recruit the participants, like just take an example of CA, Chartered Accountant, right? So CA, they have their own business, their own offices. Individually, they started doing their work, right? Suppose I'm having 2, 3 CAs in my link. I know these CAs only in my city. Might be there are 10 to 15. So I'll personally visit to them and get filled my data from them, right? Later on, I asked from them, do you have any friends in their circle so that I may get filled my data? Suppose my CA gave me the reference of three, four of their friends, right? Then after I visit to them and I get data from those 4 to 5 references. After that, once I get the data, I again ask from those leads to please help me to get out this issue. Like I have to fill the, I wanted to have 200 respondents. So can you please help me to get? So further, they again lead me few of their friends, right? So when we are getting responses from participants to participants, right? When we are recruiting participants, why participants? That is known as snowball sampling, and we used it when our population is hard to access, when it is not easily available, right? So the number of people you have to assess, that is called snowballs, right? As you get in contact with more people. So this is snowball. I know this person. He gave me 2 references, right? 1 and 2. Then I again went to him and he gave me 3 references further, and this also. This way we have to complete our research process. This way we have to complete our sample size, right? This is another example. Suppose you are researching experiences of homelessness in your city. I don't know how many people are there, homeless people are there in my city. So since we don't have any list also for all homeless people in the city. So what can I do? If we are here, my population is not finite in number. I don't know how many people are there who are homeless, right? So when our population is not finite, we have to go with non-probability sampling. If our population is finite, we can apply probability, but here our population is infinite, we can't apply, so we have to go with non-probability sampling technique. So in that case, we will go with snowball sampling, right? So here what we can do is we can meet personally with a single person who agree to you to participate in your research, to whom you are targeting first, right? That if that person is agree, then after he or she put you in contact with other person, other homeless person to whom they are, to whom they are in known, right? So this way you can collect the data from the homeless people, right? Next is quota sampling. Now what is quota sampling? Quota sampling is here the researchers choose sample individual according to some specific traits or quality. Right. So here what you have to do is, this is a non-probability sampling technique. We simply put the quota. Just take an example. If I have to collect the data regarding a particular brand of a product, right? So I wanted to check it on male. So I'll simply put the quota that I'll go with the male who is below 50. This is like a quota, right? You can fix the quota if you are you wanted to get if you are conducting a study on a beauty product, right, which is used by females. So here the quota will be, your respondent will be females only, right? So further you can put a quota like you are going to consider the particular age groups, right? On that way you can also put the quota. So this is the another example. This is my whole population. Here I'm putting the quota. I wanna to include the male in my study who is above 50 on. So this way you can put the quota. So later, after that, after putting the quota, you have to pick the respondent according to your convenient or judgment, whatever you want. This is another non-probability sampling technique. So this is all about the sampling technique. I hope it's clear to everyone.
Yes, Miss.
Um, if you have any query, then please you can ask. Otherwise, if you are comfortable, then we can start with scaling also. After sampling, you have to define the scaling. Measurement and scaling. How will you measure? How will you get your data? We have 10 minutes. If you want, then we can go with scaling also. Yes, please. Can you please let me know you want to further proceed? If you have any doubt, query, then you can write in the chat box also. Okay, so I hope everybody are aware about the data, right? What type of data we have? When we have to conduct our research, basically we have two types of data, right? One is quantitative data and the second is qualitative data, right? Quantitative data is which we can measure easily, which are in numbers only. I'll take 10 minutes only, right? Not more than that. So quantitative is when you have it in numerical form, and qualitative is when you have to, you can say you wanted to check the satisfaction level of your employee, right? Their opinion, their beliefs, right? You can't get this information on numerical form, right? So what you can do is whatever information you have in qualitative, you have to convert the same into quantitative data for the further process, for your further analysis. You might have quantitative information as well as qualitative information. It's depend upon your objectives, right? Is it clear? Then the qualitative, as I told to you, you have to convert into numerical. Okay. So here we have, this is the level of measurement scale, which basically we used for the research purpose. Here we have nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. We have four types of scale, right? So let's start with the nominal. Nominal scale is, I'm just giving you the overview as you guys don't have any query. We have 10 minutes. So let me give you the overview of the measurement and scaling, right? So nominal is when we simply assign the numbers, right? When we simply categorize, when we simply assign the number to our data, that is nominal scale, right? In ordinal, we give the numbers. First, we have to categorize the data, and after that, we have to rank the same. In that case, it itself. First, we have to categorize, and then after we have to give the orders. Means you have to give the ranks. Okay? And the third is interval. Interval means first you have to categorize. It includes nominal, ordinal also. Second, you have to rank the same, and later on you have to make the comparison. Categorization is there, ranking is there, then you have to make the comparison. And in ratio, it includes everything: categorization, ranking, comparison, and here in ratio you have true zero, absolute zero, right? Absolute zero means zero is zero. Just a second. Okay. So nominal scale, as I'm saying, in nominal scale, you have to simply categorize your data with numbers, right? So just take an example for students' roll number. We assign some numbers to them, right? So this is simply a categorization of number. That roll number, whatever numbers you have, it represents the student, right? It categorizes the student from each and everyone, right? So roll number is simply a number. Okay. So here in cricket also, you can check it in the jersey. Here you have the jersey numbers. It represents the so and so particular player. Right? Just take an example. In many of the time at the analysis person, in case of gender, we have male and female. So we put simply 1 to male and 2 to female, right? So it doesn't mean male is superior than female. one, if I'm giving 1 to male and 2 to female, it doesn't mean male is superior than female. And if I'm giving 1 to male, 2 to female, it doesn't mean females are twice superior than female. So here I'm simply assigning the numbers, that is categorization. Okay. Next is ordinal. Ordinal scale is when you have, for here under ordinal, first we have to categorize the data, and the second we have to rank the data, right? If I am ranking, like if I'm saying I have to rank the data, here what I have to do, just take an example of class position of the student, right? Student is on first position, second and third. Here I'm categorizing the student. Here I'm giving the ranks also, orders them also. Here number 1 is superior than 2. Number 2 is superior than 3. So this is the ranking. This is the Forbes list, all right? So 1 is for Bill Gates. Next, second is for calls this way. This is the ranking, right? Next is the interval scale. Here number basically we use to here numbers are used to rate the attributes in such a way that the difference between the number represent the difference between the attribute which we want to measure. Interval scale is when we are collecting the data on 5-point Likert scale, right? So we have some attributes like qualitative attributes like satisfaction, quality, their perceptions, awareness, which we can't collect directly. So we measure the same with the help of interval scale. Okay? So here in an interval scale, it includes arbitrary zero. If I'm saying arbitrary zero means zero have some value, right? Zero means not a zero, arbitrary zero. If it is zero, but still it is having some value, it is possess some value. Like zero temperature. If I'm saying temperature is zero, but still it exists. There is some temperature. So that this is known as arbitrary zero. Similarly, calendar time is, as I'm saying, difference in the here I'm saying difference between the attribute being measured. Now how can I measure the difference? Here you can say 1 to 2, right? 1 to 2 is difference is 1 also, 1 to 2 difference is 5 minutes also. Similarly 2 to 3, here difference is for 1 unit and difference is for 5 minutes, right? So similarly you can measure it. Next is ratio scale. Ratio scale basically it allows the researchers to identify or classify the objects. Then after you have to rank the objects and then you have to compare the difference between the intervals. It includes nominal, ordinals and interval itself. But here in ratio you have absolute zero. Absolute zero means if I'm saying zero, zero means zero. Just take an example. If I'm saying height cannot be zero. Weight cannot be zero. So this is all about ratio scale. Okay, any doubt here? Okay, I have received one question. Hi, girl. How do you determine the most appropriate research methodology? Actually, this for if you are asking most appropriate, basically we prefer to go with probability sampling technique only, because in probability sampling technique we are providing equal chance to each and every respondent to be a part of our research, right? So we prefer to go with probability, but you have one condition: you can apply probability sampling technique when you have your population in finite in number, right? So you have to check these parameters also, whether it is suited to your study or not. If you have your population infinite in numbers, then you can go with probability. Otherwise, you have to go with non-probability. This is the appropriate research method. So try to draft it so that in that way that you can use probability sampling technique. Next is what factors should be considered when deciding about qualitative and quantitative approach. It's not up to that. Basically, it's depend upon 5 minutes again. Yeah, miss. Thank you. Okay, so it's depend upon your objectives. What objectives you have, right? What objectives you want to attain. So if it's completely depend upon your objectives. On the basis of your objective, you can decide, right? So quantify or qualitative. Yes. Any other question? Any other question, then please you can ask. I tried my best to reach at your level. Hope it will be fruitful to you. Thank you very much.
Okay. I guess no one else asking again, Dr. Rajni. Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation. Mm, before we close this event, and for our participant, please open your camera. I will take a picture on the count of three for documentation. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, another one. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thank you for your completion. Finally, we come to the end of this lecture today. We would like to thank you for Dr. Rajni Bala for the wonderful information and sharing your knowledge. We hope this information will be beneficial for our participants. At least we hope to have for collaboration in the future with Chandigarh Group of Colleges, Punjab, India. The physical lecture for today and here. We hope to see you soon. Thank you and have a nice day. Thank you so much for Dr. Rajni. Thank you.